China's economy is on the verge of collapse. The real estate sector is teetering on the brink of collapse. Trust asset management institutions are facing danger one after another. The real estate market and stock market are in recession, and a wave of enterprises owing wages and cutting wages is spreading across the country. A few days ago, many people in Beijing revealed that since 2024, the government has increased collections, cut wages, and borrowed money to pay civil servants' salaries to maintain operations. China has fallen into a real estate crisis and a debt crisis, and various industries have experienced a major downturn. In early June, Mr. Li, a Beijing citizen, told reporters that local finances in Beijing are very tight. Unpaid wages and wage cuts have become the norm, and workers are unemployed everywhere. Mr. Li, a Beijing resident, said, "I saw that in some areas bus drivers were not paid. In other areas, urban sanitation workers were not paid. In my district, civil servants were not paid. At that time, the government could only borrow money from other districts and counties to pay its civil servants. I think this is a terrible phenomenon." As the capital of China, the center of politics, culture, and a modern international city, why has Beijing fallen into such a deep financial crisis? Mr. Li said, "Because during the 3 years of lockdown under the zero-COVID policy, many places were locked down and financially exhausted. In addition, in recent years, haven't we been spreading money to the outside world on a large scale, and generously, using our only financial reserves? Now there is nothing left. Industries that could operate normally, such as the service and food industries, could barely survive, while manufacturing and technology research and development were in dire straits. At the same time, foreign capital was also withdrawn on a large scale and became increasingly serious, a situation that continues to this day. China's economy continues to deteriorate every day, and businesses and organizations are experiencing a wave of large-scale pay cuts and layoffs." Mr. Chai, a Beijing resident, said, "I have been unemployed for 2 years. The economic downturn is very obvious. There are very few people hiring now. The environment is very bad, and there are not many job opportunities. Houses and shops are empty. Many places are for rent, businesses are closed, and businesses on the street are also closed." Mr. Chai, a Beijing resident, said that half a year after the easing of epidemic control, the economic downturn has begun to show, and more than 50% of young people are unemployed this year. Mr. Chai said, "There are a lot of unemployed people around me now. This year and last year are the worst." Since the Spring Festival, the wave of bankruptcies and closures has become more and more obvious. The main reason is that the headquarters of many different companies are in Beijing. Consumption data for China's 2 largest cities, Beijing and Shanghai, fell 14.1% and 13.5% respectively in November, contrasting with the national consumption trend. Analysis shows that as foreign capital flows decline and mid- and high-end business activity decreases, the biggest impact will be on major cities such as Beijing and Shanghai. According to data from multiple local statistical agencies, total retail sales of consumer goods in Shanghai fell 13.5% year-on-year in November. Total retail sales of consumer goods in Beijing also fell 14.1% in November, with online wholesale and retail sales on a designated scale, as well as accommodation and catering establishments, down 22.4%. Fewer and fewer people are coming to Beijing and Shanghai for tourism and business. This year, many enterprises and organizations have significantly reduced the standards of business travel subsidies, and national business activities around Beijing and Shanghai have also been cut. Independent tourists are no longer as generous with their spending as before. Liu Xiaobo pointed out that compared to Beijing and Shanghai, the consumption situation in major cities such as Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Hangzhou, Chengdu, Suzhou, and Nanjing is much better, although they are all in a general recession. It can be seen that the most serious decline in consumption in China this time is in Beijing and Shanghai, where business and tourism activities are the most frequent and of the highest quality. In addition, the consumption situation in Hong Kong is also not good. As of October, Hong Kong's retail sales fell by 2.9%. Food service revenue fell by 1.3% in the third quarter, and the accommodation service revenue index fell by 10.2%. Liu Xiaobo believes that when foreign capital inflows decrease and middle and high-end business activities decline, the three gateway centers of Beijing, Shanghai, and Hong Kong will be most affected. Therefore, the consumption level in Beijing, Shanghai, and Hong Kong, especially in accommodation and food, is a representative index of the Chinese economy. Big news! Will China's GDP drop to 1%? On the 18th, the Japan Center for Economic Research released its economic forecast for when U.S. President-elect Trump imposes additional tariffs on China and other countries. It is estimated that if the United States imposes a 60% tariff on China and a 10% tariff on other countries and regions, China's actual growth rate will drop to the 1% range by 2035. Nikkei Chinese reported that this time, it summarized the economic growth expectations of 18 countries and regions in the Asia-Pacific region by 2035. The Japan Center for Economic Research releases the latest estimates of recent policies and economic situations around December every year. The Japan Center for Economic Research's estimates are based on Trump's campaign promise of imposing an additional 60% tariff on China and an additional 10% tariff on other countries and regions. In addition, the condition that the other parties do not impose retaliatory tariffs is added and set as a standard scenario. According to the forecast, China's gross domestic product, GDP growth rate, will slow rapidly from 4.7% in 2024 to 3.4% in 2025. It will recover to around 4% in 2026. But the growth rate will continue to slow down, falling below 3% by 2030 and dropping to 1.8% by 2035. Existing economic stagnation factors, such as the real estate recession and population decline, are coupled with reduced exports due to tariffs. For China, if the additional U.S. tariff is 10%, exports will decrease by 2.3%, and if the additional tariff reaches 60%, exports will decrease by nearly 14%. Japan will also be affected. If the United States imposes an additional tariff of 10% on Japan, exports will decrease by about 2%. Japan's economic growth rate will increase from negative 0.3% in 2024 to 1.2% in 2025. But there will be no signs of recovery. It will fall below 1% in 2028 and stabilize at around 0% after 2029. China's nominal GDP recently exceeded 60% of that of the United States. It will increase to nearly 70% by 2035, but the economic size of China and the United States will not reverse. The gap between the strong U.S. economy and the continued slowdown of the Chinese economy will have an impact. On the other hand, Trump's policies will also harm the United States itself. The standard scenario assumes that Trump will deport 1.3 million illegal immigrants in 2025. Due to factors such as reduced employment, the U.S. growth rate in 2025 is expected to be 1.6%. Down 1.2 percentage points from 2.8% in 2024. The U.S. growth rate is expected to remain at 1.6% in 2035. Real footage of poor workers' lives in Beijing. Are urban villages in Beijing really slums? Is this a slum? Absolutely. Do you think this is a slum? No, it's no poorer than this. Today I came to Changping District, Beijing, specifically to Yuxinzhuang Village in Shanghai Town. This is an urban village with more than 70,000 Beidiao people. Many young people live here, fighting hard and trying to survive, but there is no guarantee that, in the future, they will have shelter. However, this will not stop them from drifting north in the slightest. In this video, I will explore aspects such as food, clothing, rented housing, and transportation. To fully showcase the real situation of the village in the city, allowing everyone to better understand what an urban village is like during Beijing's 2024 graduation season. Yuxinzhuang, a famous urban village in Changping District, is located on the north bank of the Beixia River. Compared with Haidian District and Chaoyang District, where house prices are 60,000 yuan per square meter, here, with just over 1,000 yen, you can rent a place equipped with a washing machine, refrigerator, and air conditioner. There are even single apartments with separate bathrooms, and the village is less than 1 kilometer away from Shanghai subway station. These unique conditions make Yuxinzhuang the first stop for many who choose to drift north. A resident of the urban village evaluated life here. This place in Beijing can still offer 3 oysters for 12 yuan. Is this a slum? Absolutely. Do you think this is still a slum? No, it's no poorer than this. Here, life is convenient. Food, clothing, housing, transportation, even medical needs and daily necessities. You can find it all here. It's like a small society independent of Beijing. With more than 70,000 residents, Yuxinzhuang is a vibrant and self-contained community. If I were to describe my first impression of the urban village, it would be delicious. This is definitely a foodie's paradise, with snacks from all corners of the country readily available. On the day I shot the video, I enjoyed BBQ and stinky tofu, which tasted as good as those served in high-rent shops. If I have the chance, I would come back to eat here again and again. What do people wear in the urban village? After talking about eating, let's see what people wear. Although online shopping is very popular and already the main channel for buying clothes, there are still clothing stores here. Brands like Anta, Red Star, Urka, Adidas, Nike, and Hailan Home have set up shops. However, the number of shops is few. After all, when it comes to clothing, physical stores cannot compete with online shopping. How much is the rent and cost of living in the urban village? It's time for the part that everyone cares about the most. It is impossible to live in an urban village and buy a house. The land here is collectively owned and is not for sale, so renting is the only option. I consulted with 2 landlords about studio apartment rental prices and followed a young lady to see a few suites to get a feel for the rental prices and living costs. The cost of renting includes house rental prices, as well as water, electricity, broadband, sanitation, and winter heating costs. Water costs 8 yuan per ton, electricity costs 1.5 yuan per unit. Sanitation fees are 20 yuan per person per month, broadband costs 100 yuan per month, and winter heating costs 400 yuan per month. Is it convenient to travel around the urban village? Yuxinzhuang, an urban village that gathers so many people, owes its popularity primarily to the subway. Less than 1 kilometer from Yuxinzhuang is Shanghai Station on the Changping Line, which connects Changping County to Beijing's Haidian and Changping districts, 2 of Beijing's most important subway lines. Haidian and Changping are also the 2 regions in Beijing with the largest concentration of internet companies. Most of the young people who have just arrived in Beidiao work for internet companies. Naturally, Yuxinzhuang village has become the first choice for these young professionals to live. Every day at 5 p.m., they come out of the subway, forming a steady stream of people returning to the village, which continues until 9 or 10 p.m. Summary of life in the urban village. The village in the city is just as the landlord here described. Every year, newcomers arrive, but only a few manage to stay. Even though some people label the village a slum, it acts like a whirlpool, attracting countless people from the north to settle here. At 5 o'clock in the morning, cleaning ladies set off for the 3rd Ring Road. At 9 o'clock a.m., young people who aspire to change the world go to work and often leave at 9 o'clock p.m. At night, small vendors set up stalls, busy until midnight. People from various industries live here, working tirelessly to chase their dreams. Are urban villages slums? To the residents, it doesn't matter. Affordable shops with everything they need and convenient transportation are reasons they can't refuse to live here. The world may be harsh and the years unforgiving, but the increasing migrant population and the reduced pace of urban village renovations reflect how these spaces are vital. Although this city may not always welcome dream chasers, urban villages remain havens for those striving to shine. Life demands people to become their own masters. Under the CCP regime, if you don't work hard and strive, you won't have anything to eat, let alone realize your dreams. In this so-called socialist paradise, you hardly get any benefits or help in life. On the contrary, you have to pay taxes on almost every item you use, so the path of the migrant working class is to work without days off, without a retirement age. You will have to work all your life until you die. Street view of the urban village's Central Street. On the bustling Central Street, I met a guy selling grilled oysters. "Give me 3, I said. The price was shockingly low, just 12 yuan for 3 oysters. I asked, "Aren't barbecue shops usually more expensive, over 10 yuan each?" The vendor explained it was all fresh stock from the same day. He even offered takeaway options. Behind his stall, he had his own table where customers could sit and eat. The street was lively with people. I hadn't realized how many were out tonight. Despite the low prices, the vendor managed to make a living, collecting payments through WeChat. Thank you for watching the video. Producing such content is not easy, but if it helped you, I promise to bring even better videos in the future. See you next time. Unable to retire to survive, migrant workers work until they can no longer work. Guan Junling, 53, is too old to be employed by factories anymore. But for migrant workers like her, retirement is not an option. For decades, migrant workers have come from rural areas to cities in search of work, working in sweatshops and building apartment buildings they can never afford, making important contributions to China's transformation into an economic powerhouse, the Associated Press reported. As they age, the first generation of migrant workers finds it difficult to find work in a slowing economy. But many are financially strapped, with meager or almost no pensions, and have to continue working. There is no such thing as retirement or pension for rural populations. You can only rely on yourself and work hard, Guan Junling said. When can you stop working? Really, until you have to lie in bed and can't do anything. China has 3 types of pension systems: civil servants, enterprise employees, and urban and rural residents, covering farmers. Civil servants have the highest pensions, enterprise employees the second, and urban and rural residents the lowest. The CCP's pension system lacks support for the rapidly aging migrant workers. Although China's first generation of migrant workers has now reached retirement age, many of them are still engaged in intensive labor because their rural hukou excludes them from better retirement benefits than urban wage earners, resulting in insufficient social security payments, averaging between 100 yuan, less than $14, and 200 yuan, about $28, per month. The lack of adequate pension support in rural areas has greatly delayed the retirement of migrant workers. The first generation of migrant workers refers to those born in the 1970s or earlier. By 2022, the most recent year for which data is available, about 85 million of them will be over 50, accounting for 29% of all migrant workers, up from 15% a decade ago. With limited or no pensions and health insurance, they need to continue working. Guan Junling now works as a housekeeper, cleaning rooms, and needs to work long hours to save a little money for emergencies. If Guan Junling needs to go to a hospital in Beijing for treatment, she has to pay out of pocket. Xi'an, a scholar of rural sociology in China, presented her research in a speech last year. She said that in a questionnaire survey of 2,500 first-generation migrant workers conducted between 2018 and 2022, about 75% said they would still work after the age of 60.